Good morning to you once again. Last time we are looking at the factors. We looked at those factors very well, and today we are going to be pushing up from a different thing. We try to look at those factors. We try to look at how nationalism grows among the different things. Talked about formation of political parties, AAU. Talked about the role of missionaries' activities. Talked about inspiration of different countries. Talked about the independence some countries have gotten. Talked about revolutions, Egyptian revolution. Talked about Mau Mau. Those are the factors that we tried to talk about the other time when we are here. And now we are going to be pushing up from a different thing. We are going to be looking at the characteristics, or we are going to be looking at the features of African nationalism. When we talk about nationalism, what are those things trying to show that really Africans are united, though they have a strong love for their nations? Those are the things we are going to be looking at and we try to see. When we look at African nationalism, say that it was a strong love for one's country, desire. They talked about in terms of social, economical, political, and cultural independence. But now when we push on, we are going to be looking at the characteristics. If we talk about nationalism, and we want to look at the features, what do we actually try to see, or what do we look at? And we say that the country or the nation is undergoing what we call nationalism. The first point that we shall be talking about is African nationalism is characterized by, or it has features of a strong hatred against what we call colonialism, and its manifestation in terms of political dominations. I talk about racial segregation, over-taxation, forced labor. I talk about sorts of exploitation of resources. That one means that Africans now have started hating the conduct or the characters that they may be experiencing as a nation. That one tries to show that Africans now are trying to hate colonialism. And then the other that you can also talk about, it can be in line with what we call leadership of educated Africans. Leadership of educated Africans, this one tries to show that very many Africans had gone to what we call, or had attended missionary schools where they got some skills. They started becoming, or they are employed as clerks. Talk about secretaries and interpreters. That means that they had understood better the evil of colonialism. Therefore, they were taught different topics concerning French Revolution, whereby in French Revolution they are able to understand or to be opened up to the minds that they needed the liberty, equality, talk about fraternity, and they based on those things to criticize what we call the colonial masters. Therefore, the elite, or people that were learning, they also read different newspapers, they listened to radios, interpreted nationalistic ideas in rural masses. For the rural masses, or to the rural masses, they tried now to come up with different speeches, talk about slogans of different eras, and they used them. For instance, talk about Kwame Nkrumah's slogan, whereby he said, self-government now. That one, it increased the love for one's country within Ghana. Therefore, people started now to hate what you call colonialism. Then the other that we can also talk about, it can be that nationalism was also characterized by sabotage from a controversial traditional African chiefs. I talk about sultans. These people had collaborated with the European colonialists, and they had benefited a lot from them. For instance, the Kabaka of Uganda and the Sultan of Arabia, and talk about that one of Zanzibar. When these elites started demanding for independence, we are seeing that conservative African chiefs and sultans saw them as a great danger to the political position. Therefore, the attendance of conservatism leaders to work for a continuity of colonialism until they tired the rest of African nationalism. When you look at these Africans, at first they are trying now to collaborate with these colonialists. Eventually, they started seeing these Africans as these African leaders has a blame to them for having brought this colonialist closer to them. So that one, it means it shows that it is also a different characteristic of nationalism within Africa. When we move on, the other that we can also talk about is that it was characterized by militarism. I talk about radicalism. It was characterized by militarism, or what you call radicalism. With the radicalism and militarism, you are looking at the use of weapons or brutal means of the whites in such countries. We are trying to see that militarism became more widespread after the return of the ex-servicemen from the Second World War. These Africans tried to demand for the separate or started demanding for a speedy demand for to end what we call colonialism. And among the militant nationalism, we had what we call a president by then, that was Gabriel Nasser. I then talk about San nationalistic president of Namibia. Then talk about Jim of Central Republic of Africa. Those leaders tried now to agitate for nationalistic ideas or revolutionary ideas, having acquired some skills when they practiced in the war. But don't miss out the characteristics I talked about, that these people were trying now to demand for the NS. Then talk about the closure associated with the urbanization. This is also another characteristic that tried to show that Africanism was in existence. When you look at the urban centers, talk about Accra, Lagos, Kampala, these areas were developed by the colonialists, and a number of Africans were flogged at urban centers expecting jobs. When they reached into these areas, they found nothing. To this one rose into what we call the African demand for independence. So that shows that nationalism was existing in those countries. Then the other that you can also talk about, it was characterized by negotiation for independence from all over the African continents, where the Africans were educated, or educated Africans began negotiating with the colonial masters to grant them independence to African countries. However, these what we call dialogues, debates around the table talks did not yield required results. Therefore, it was then Africans changed from verbal radical ideology now to what we term as military method of struggling for independence. For instance, we try to see that South Africa provided a basic example whereby the ANC tried now to started negotiating, but later opened up militarism wing. Otherwise, for a longer time, it remained theoretical but not verbal, implying that negotiations were considered. On top of that, they try now to spearhead what we call the African nationalism. Then the other that we can also talk about, it can be a characteristic of the formation of the mass political parties. When we try to see the different political parties, we are formed, for example, the UGECC, then the CPP. CPP was within Ghana. Then the other we have the UPF, UFF, that is the Uganda. It was in Uganda. Then you had what you call TANU, that was in Tanzania. The TANU. These political parties were sensitized about the needs for making against the need of making action against the whites, and therefore we see that these political parties they were under the leadership of elites, all people that had gone to school, who published the injustices of colonialism during open public talks. So that one tried to show also another character that we can also give an eye. Then the other that we can also try to talk about is formation of liberation movements. For instance, we had what we call the National Liberation Front of Algeria. Then talk about the African National Congress of South Africa, that was in South Africa. Then you add what we call MPLA, then also other different liberation movements. All these ones were all caused the pressure, or they were against the African oppressive and exploitative characters of the colonialists. Then the other we can also talk about it was characterized by a great pride in different African continents and the black skins. Therefore, it is that this black color that was due to the discrimination of the whites that were against the blacks. So their color in terms of the blacks also the major characteristic that they use now to spray what we call the ideas of revolution, depending to different countries within Europe and within Africa. That the whites we are discriminating the Africans because of their color and how they looked like. So it is that color that geared all the Africans also to start revenge against these whites or colonists. In other words, to revenge into the desire of what we call the economic independence, talk about and the growth of nationalistic ideas. Also these ones are tried now to spread within the nations. We can also consider that. Then talk about can be neocolonialism. It is also another factor that even those countries that we are granted independence, we are still experiencing the same thing. Then talk about arrests in different nations. Was also a major characteristic that we are trying to see, that many Africans were arrested and detained in radical African nationalistic personalities that were detained. We had Nelson Mandela, that one was South Africa. Then Stephen Biko was also a prominent political party, that is the Alliance of National Congress. That person also died in a prison. And then therefore talk about Ahmad bin Bella. Ahmad bin Bella was from Ghana. Also that one was arrested, and even other prominent leaders that were within these African nations were arrested. We are trying to see that arrests were characteristics of African nationalism. And then the other that we can talk about the desire of African culture, that African culture was trying to be eroded away. Since these Africans, we are now trying to adopt the Western culture. More Africans try to see that their different culture could no longer be existent in some years to come, so it forced them now to try to resist or to revenge against these colonialists. Therefore, we shall be picking up from there.